Markle running short of money, literally Prince Harry down to his last few coppers. Is this really the story that has hit the front page of this tabloid magazine? And more importantly, where did it come from? Because originally it was going to be a totally different story. As ever, let me explain. Morning, good to see you. Thank you so much as ever for your time today. Are you well? You all right? Not bad? Yes, thank you. You know, the tabloids are a funny thing. You know, as I said, I've had experience of them myself for many years. And the bottom line is a lot of the time, you know, you basically have to, how can I put this nicely? You look at it with a pinch of salt. You know, there's a sort of story like that. Most people, particularly who tip off the tabloids, as we know, tend to be people like, you know, who are aggrieved, say, ex-staffers, employees, stuff like that. Sometimes they have a sort of grievance to bear. Other times they simply just want to make some extra bucks. But they now have to have that backup proof. That's the deal. You know, in the old days, you would sort of say, particularly if it was like a Hollywood star and you'd work for them, well, you would take their word for it. Things are different now. So this particular story that hit this particular magazine is rather stunning in itself. You see, let me explain. In Touch magazine is one of those sort of magazines, as we know, that, you know, good glossy picture, shock headlines, that sort of stuff. Now, recently, of course, when they were putting this magazine together, the idea really was everything was thrown out simply because of the very tragic and early death of a much-loved pop star, Liam Payne, who sadly lost his life after a terrible situation over in Argentina. No two ways about it. And it's a funny thing, isn't it, as well, just to tell you this, that now people are trying to book that room to stay in because they're devoted. I mean, I find that sort of thing very macabre. Do you? Very strange, isn't it? But this was going to be the front page cover, detailing what they knew at that point of going to print. Everything was set up, all that sort of stuff. And then at the 11th hour, it was all scrapped, and the editorial team had to revisit this. Now, they'd been given this exclusive from someone, literally, they couldn't turn it down from, right? So, this is where we all know, and as ever we have to say allegedly, Harry and Meghan like to play with the tabloids, whichever way you look at it. You see, what their sort of premise is that if you're talking about that, then you won't notice this, and that's how it works. I worked in tabloids for years on and off, and that's exactly how celebrities operate, you know, give you something else and then you won't notice this. This was an old trick that they did way back, of course, in the 50s and 40s in the big Hollywood studios, remember? Keep Rock Hudson safe, but choke Tab Hunter to the wolves. It's nothing new. Now, what's the true sort of story behind this particular debacle? Well, it is all about the money. It is all about, of course, whether they can afford to run. But the reason behind the scenes is that I've been told Harry and Meghan would very much like people to know that it's a costly business being them. And while people will say, well, they had all that money from X, Y, and Z, as I told you before, I never believed that Netflix paid 100 million for what they got. It always comes in installments. It's the same with the money from Spotify. The book money for Penguin Random House will be a fraction of what people are actually saying. This is because Prince Harry had a deal for 4 books. So far, he's only produced the 1 book, so he gets a fraction of the money. He couldn't be bothered to update the paperback book, he didn't want to do a forward, didn't want to add any new chapters, so as I told you previously, he's lost out on money there. So why would the Sussexes want this sort of story, and why do they never hit out at anything negative like this, but seemingly get upset over something far more feeble like Family Guy or South Park? Well, according to a source, this is an excellent source that gave the story, and they want people to focus on something else rather than what's truly going on behind the scenes. Now, as many people know, of course, we all know what's going on behind the scenes. It's a matter of time as to whether and when that story finally hits. But will In Touch want to cover it? That's the interesting thing, right? Neil Sean in the very heart of London.